Welcome to day 5, the final day of our workshop on cybersecurity, as was organized by EACO. EACO is an East African communication organization. As we have seen in the past days of our workshop, we went through how to use various penetration testing tools in studying and analyzing weaknesses in various networks, from GSM networks to normal websites. And we witnessed a number of weaknesses existing in our East African cyberspace. Our presenters, as usual, we've been Siri, Dr. Kapisi, Mr. Jacob Mtui, and me. So today we will try to see how we interpret results which are being found in cyber security assessment. So you follow me and we try to go a little bit slowly, but in brief. Okay, we saw various injection vulnerabilities. For example, as we saw, this was one of the banks. It was found that out of 385 vulnerabilities, 206 were high, ranked high. Being ranked high, it means it is very easy to exploit such vulnerabilities. For example, it was found with insecure session cookies, cross-site script include, integer overflow. We'll go in brief to the interpretation of integer overflow, because it is a vulnerability which is very dangerous to be found in any site which is offering financial services, processing money, things like bank, and so on. Such vulnerability is very, very dangerous. We see its interpretation. We see Sql Injection, Sql, and possibly some other vulnerabilities. We won't go through them all because of time, but I will pick selected vulnerabilities for interpretations. Injection vulnerabilities. We say computer applications are normally designed to accept data from a user. For example, in this site, this is for the Rwanda communication agency, I suppose. A user can input anything, for example here, or you can go to the webmail and log in. You are inputting information in this site. The site takes it to the server for processing. Another one, for example, is for the the Kenyan Communication Authority. There is somewhere where a user can input information, for example here. Similarly, for the Uganda Communication Commission, there is somewhere you can input information. For the TCRA, somewhere you can input information, and so many other websites might have somewhere where a user can input something. You see, now we say computer applications are designed to accept user data, or input. They can accept input from other applications. For properly designed application, it must have a mechanism to verify correctness of the inputted data. That means if the data intended was a number and someone inputs characters, then that system has to have a mechanism of verifying that the inputted data is a number and not a character. Okay. Now, code injection, we say, is the exploitation of a computer bug that is caused by processing an invalid data. It might happen, and normally the case for many applications we have found in our research is that systems do not properly interpret data which are being inputted. and that results to code injection. And that code injection is normally used by an attacker to inject code into vulnerable computer application, and they can change the course of action. The result is they can allow for bad guys to inject computer worms, malware, even ransomware, which has been a big problem in our cyberspace. Injection, code vulnerabilities occurs when applications send untrusted data to an interpreter. And the most common code injection flaws which we found and which do exist are SQL and command injections. Yeah, these are very, very common, and we've been seeing them in our cyberspace time to time. We will interpret what they really mean in the course of this presentation. Right, and code injection, we say, is a technique used in hacking or cracking in order to gain information or unauthorized data system. And hackers may have many purposes in conducting code injection. For example, they can modify values in database through Sql Injection. We will see several examples, and you remember when we are doing certain experiment with SQL map, we could manage to take over the entire database, and we could do any manipulation if we want. Again, a successive code injection can result in installation of malware, including ransomware. As we remember, and I was telling you, of course, I will share with you our report in which was published in the year 2020. We conducted a research on web app security, but we are analyzing malware, samples, and code injection vulnerabilities in Tanzania cyberspace. We had a research permit from the commission, from COSTECH, and the report is there. I will share with you. But we could find a number of malware circulating in our cyberspace, and most of them were a result of existence of code injection in various web applications. Okay, let's see SQL injection. This is one of the banks, as I said. Vulnerabilities in SQL are present when externally supplied input is used to construct an SQL query. If the site or the web application is designed to accept input, for example, the login form, or somewhere you put such data, somewhere where somebody try to log in his or her email address, you are inputting information. Yeah. If SQL injection do exist, there is a possibility of the inputted information to cause a successive SQL injection exploitation. Now, if precautions are not taken, the external supplied input usually get or post can modify the query string such that it performs unintended action, including gaining unauthorized access, read or write. Injection vulnerabilities, SQL injections, has a severe impact. They can be exploited by remote attackers. You see, exploitation of SQL injection vulnerability allows for attacker to gain attacker against the logic of the application. These are very common. Of course, the impact you have seen in our workshop when we tried to exploit some of SQL injection vulnerabilities in various sites which we are testing. So the impact is not new to you. Now, what are the remediation? How to mitigate SQL injection? That was a question which you were asking several times during the course of our presentation. The best defense against SQL injection vulnerability is to use a parameterized statement. That is, you sanitize inputs. Even inputs in computer have to be sanitized. If not the normal sanitization which we are doing against COVID, but we sanitize input parameters, those which we intend to input. I mean, the input which the user supplies to our system has to be sanitized before. You see, sanitization of the input can prevent Sql injection. For developers, the term sanitization of input is not new. Now you have to make sure that you sanitize input. And we say use of stored procedures can simplify complex queries and allow for tighter access control settings. And you have configuring database access control can limit the impact of exploited vulnerabilities. This is normally a mitigation strategy which we do, and we do advise developers to consider if they want at all to mitigate SQL injections. These are the mitigations which you have to consider as a developer. Now, for example, this was a particular command which, remember, we did supply when we were testing some of the sites which we were going through. As we can see, with the SQL injection, you can dump database and tables. For example, this table, it was possible to uncover administrative users in that site, their names, and we could manage to get password hashes, as we can all see here. I tried to cover up some of the information because until now it looks like these weaknesses have not been covered off. So until the respective owners cover up, then we can remove these areas where we have tried to, to cover. Otherwise, we can make life easier for hackers to manipulate with sites. Okay, this again, it was, as you remember, I told you one of the service providers whose core network was not properly designed. We could manage to go through core network and try to interrogate her SMSC server and grab certain stored SMSCs, which are normally in plain form. This is the impact of SQL injection, as we have been talking. Now, as a homework, I leave with you to find any vulnerable site, try to grab password hashes and crack using a cracker of your choice. First, start with a website which you own or which you have, responsibility on it. Test if it is SQL injectable, and if possible, go further by trying to grab a username and password. This might be a nice homework for you to do when you go back to your offices. You can use any tools. You can try Vega, which we did practice on, or Zap, or NetSpacker. NetSpacker is a commercial tool. It is very, very impressive, and I encourage for you to see a possibility of buying one. You can contact us if you wish to have one, and we can organize a special training program on NetSpack for you and see how you can proceed. I think you have our email addresses. You can contact us if you need a NetSpack or any other commercial tool that can perform assessment, cybersecurity assessment. Okay, do SQL map, and you can crack using John the Ripper or any other cracker of your choice. Now we saw existence of command injections. Again, the same vulnerable bank had command injection. Command injection are equally dangerous like SQL injections. They can aid an attacker to gain remote access and to manipulate the site, can inject malware, all those things. Impact of these command injections are always the same. They are similar, being SQL or any other, they are always similar. Okay, remediation of command injection is, we say, you should try to avoid to allow execution of system commands through command interpreter. Developers know this very well. It is absolutely necessary for developers to take extra care with validating input before it passes to the interpreter. This is very crucial for developers to do. Most of these weaknesses are a result of developers ignoring certain parameters. We have seen that most of the developers, their primary goals is to make sure that their site or their system is up and running, is working. But considering security has been completely another thing in their minds. So security have to be considered from the from go. Integer overflow, as I said, integer overflow is equally dangerous, even more dangerous, because it can enable cyber criminals stealing money from banks. So for financial institutions or e-commerce related sites should strongly avoid integer overflow. Unfortunately, it is witnessed in most of our cyberspace. Now let's see this brief video clip, and you will see the impact of integer overflow.
Let me show you some real-life example of integer overflow that I stumbled upon while live streaming a Pico CTF over on Twitch. The challenge is to buy an item in a shop that is very expensive. It costs around 1 million, but we only have $1,000. So in order to buy it, we have to spend negative money so we can get money, because the software subtracts the amount to pay from your account. So if the total cost is -3, it's like your account minus the amount. So it's -3, which in turn is +3. Quick maths. This example is actually kind of a reversed version of the code snippet showed before. This is the code we need to bypass. Now you see the first if mentioned before, and then the second one. The goal here is to earn or steal money. The total price to pay is the amount of items to buy times 1000, because the item costs 1000. We need a number that when multiplied by 1000 results in a negative signed integer. Let me show you what I did. Here I had to input the amount of items I want to buy. And this number times 1000 will result in a negative one. Let's continue. As you can see, this number is negative. So if we spend this amount, we will get money back. Now we just need to find a number that will be a very low negative number, like -1 million. Did you see this? We are rich, baby. And this is how you perform an integer overflow attack. The prevention of this is said fairly easy, but could be hard to implement in real life, because the fix is to just watch out for the different type of integers you use. Make sure that you don't pass signed integers to unsigned and unsigned to signed. Don't mix them up, because this will lead to an integer overflow. In short, you need to be cautious about what type of integer you're using. In the shop, from the example before, there was no reason to have a negative total amount to pay. So why was it a signed integer in the first place? I mean, you could just do it as an unsigned one, because no item is gonna cost you -10 bucks. Make sure to check out the blog post mentioned at the beginning, so you can always reread what I was babbling about here in a much shorter fashion. So you can always pop it up at work and see what an integer overflow is, and maybe it will help you out. If it did, subscribe to the channel in the next video.
Okay, that's how integer overflow can be very dangerous in e-commerce or financial institution site. Okay, they occur when data types exceed their maximum value. As we've seen, I see that video was very elaborative. so I don't have to spend more time trying to explain about integer overflow. Remediation, you have to make sure that integer types are properly defined. Now, we saw a number of vulnerabilities in a cryptographic cipher or cipher suits are being used. For example, in this site, we could witness a number of vulnerabilities which are a result of implementation of wrong encryption cipher suits. That means encryption concatenation has been taken into very, very poor consideration. This is a very, very common problem in our cyberspace, which we witnessed in various of our researches. For example, this one had a weakness in Switch 32, had the weakness in Beast, LAC13. You could find other sites vulnerable to most of these weaknesses. Now, I will define at least one of them and leave other for you to research on and understand what it really means. All the literatures are found. They can be searched and you can read them freely. For example, Switch 32, which we sometimes call it birthday attack. It allows an attacker to recover small portion of plain text. Remember, these encryption vulnerabilities are being exploited through man-in-the-middle attacks. Man-in-the-middle attacks, where you sniff traffic which is being communicated between a user and his or her system, then try to crack the content of the sniffed data and see if you can get the content in a plain text form. That's a main weakness which we are trying to exploit when we are analyzing communication passes of information, as we've seen or we did in our previous presentation during this workshop. Now, if you find a site have implemented a data encryption standard in their cipher suits, or blowfish encryption, that means that site is potentially vulnerable to Switch 32, and information being exchanged can be sniffed and successfully cracked. You see, now you have to be very careful when choosing which encryption to implement in your cipher suits. For example, we can see in this one, when we say a cipher suit, it is how you combine various encryption algorithms. For example, RSA is a strong algorithm, but in this server, we could see RSA has been combined or concatenated with the CBC, called blockchain, and the secure hash, which are very weak. The result is the entire cipher suit is weak. That's the problem which is observed in most of the developers implementing their cipher suit encryption in their system. How to combine encryption, how to concatenate encryption when they're establishing their cipher suits. These weaknesses result to serious problem in the security of communication of information being exchanged between user and their corresponding servers. Now, to get rid of this is to make sure that you don't concatenate stronger and weaker encryption at the same time. The result is will be useless of using such an encryption. Okay. Now I will take you through an overview of various penetration testing reports. I told you, and we practiced during the course of our workshop. We used various penetration testing assessment tools, like in NetSpacker. We tried to use the Vigor, we tried to use the ZAP. We said each of them has got its advantage over the other, but their intention is to attain the same goal, that is to conduct a cybersecurity assessment. We said Vega is producing a number of tests, and the results are quite many, and you can it gives you outputs which can be inputted to other penetration testing tool for assessment. But the problem is it does not give us a nice presentation report. If you are a pen tester being hired to conduct penetration testing, now you want to produce a report. With Vega, you have to copy the findings manually and take them to any other applications which can aid you in producing reports. It does not produce a report of its own, and unfortunately it has never been updated since it has been implemented more than 7-8 years back, I think, until now. Yeah, but still it is usable. Yeah, ZAP has good reports. I remember we saw how ZAP produces report. I wonder if I have one here prepared for you. Let me check, and we can see how ZAP produces report. This is a sample report. You see, it gives you a nice summary which you can present for authorities or decision makers to allow you to fix the various weaknesses which you have uncovered. And let's see if I had prepared a sample NetSpacker report for you ready, but I will share with you even if it is not here. But you do remember that we did conduct a number of penetration testing reports using NetSpacker, and you remember how the output and findings were. See, now I should pause here and allow to receive questions from your end to see if you need any clarification. Yeah, I will be ready to receive them. You see, now I can say you are quite welcome to for any question you might be having.